What's up, guys? Wanted to do a quick review of sort of a different thing on my channel. It's a really affordable knife, and I don't often do really affordable knives. Really, it's an excellent knife. The title tells you Kershaw Knockout. It's one of their newer models. I think it came out last year. Pretty sure last year. So 2012 model. Really affordable knife. Kind of the same as a lot of their other knives in dealing with the steel and just general build, speed assist, things like that, and I'll get into that in a minute. But really excellent knife. It did become one of my favorites, most definitely. I've carried this knife more than I've carried most of my other knives, say for Sebenzas and the ones I have in my pocket all the time, which are Hinder Sebenzas. Things like that. So Striders, of course. So I've carried this knife more than just about anything, really, and I really grew to love it. There's a couple things I don't like about it, and I'll hit on that. A couple things I really like about it, and I'll tell you that as well. But no real script to this, so I'm just going to talk about what I like and what I don't like. First, I will give you a size comparison. So you have it up against another Kershaw, which is a Blur, pretty much the same size, and here's a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Really, all three roughly the exact same size. So if you have a Par 2 or a Blur, you know about what size the knife is going to be. So it's really not a huge knife, not a small knife by any means, but not a huge knife either. So I'll just kind of give you a quick look at it. So you have aluminum scales. These are hard anodized aluminum. You have a stonewashed 14C 28N blade, which is Kershaw's proprietary Sandvik steel. You have just a standard black painted pocket clip, which is excellent, lowrider clip. Stainless steel. I think this is either Parkerized, black oxide, something like that. Stainless steel lock bar insert, and you do have speed assist. So this is an assisted knife. The speed assist is one thing that I do wish they would change about this. This knife is incredibly smooth as is, so it has more than enough smoothness and build quality to be a manual flipper. There's no need to have the speed assist in this knife, in my opinion. Now, it does have a detent ball, so the lock bar does have a detent ball, but it does not have a hole for that ball to ride on, or to actually engage. So you see there's a detent ball, but there's no hole, so the actual assist mechanism is the only thing keeping the blade closed. So if someone were to be skillful enough to drill a hole in this, you could turn this into a manual flipper, and I do wish they would offer this in a manual flipper because it is an excellent knife. Really smooth action. As far as build quality, overall excellent. Absolutely no vertical play, absolutely no horizontal play. So build quality is very great. Fit and finish is great. Only a couple little nitpicky things about the fit and finish. Backspacer doesn't line up completely right here, as it does everywhere else. Really, that is my only fit and finish gripe. Some people may complain about the finish that's on this. It did come this way. I've added a little bit more nicks to it, but it does come fairly rough looking in certain lights. Some people may complain about that. Doesn't matter to me. Pocket clip, finish wise, is great. It's black painted. I have carried this pretty extensively, so you could see a lot of the paint that was on this pocket clip is coming off, and it's not super easy to strip the paint off this, so it's not going to come off every time you bump into something, but through many months of carrying, it has come to strip a little bit. You can see it in detail there. It's kind of getting raggedy looking. You could take this off and clean it, polish it up, polish all the black off of it, make it look nice if you wanted to. Speaking of the pocket clip, pretty much perfect. Low ride carry, nice tension on the pocket clip. So once it's in your pocket, it sits low, it sits securely, sits out of the way, so you only have about that much coming out of your pocket. So it's very inconspicuous, rides really well in your pocket. Speaking of riding really well, the overall package is very slim. So if you compare this to something like a Paramilitary 2, which is a slim knife in and of itself, you could see it's actually much slimmer than a Para 2. So that gives you a good idea of just how slim and compact this knife is. So very slim, very light. I don't know the exact specs. That's something you can look up yourself, widely available. It is light. It's not super light due to the full aluminum construction. Aluminum's always going to be, metal is always going to be heavier than something like G10. So if it had a G10 scale on this side, it would be much lighter. But honestly, it's not heavy in the least bit. It's definitely manageable. I would guess 4.5 ounces. That's a pure guess. Could be lower or higher than that, of course. So look that up yourself. As far as the durability of the scales themselves, they are very, very durable. Do have some scuffs, scrapes, that's just from use. Nothing really too severe, and it has taken some pretty hard knocks. You can see there's no place where the actual coating is chipped off, or right here may be the roughest spot. But really it's very durable. It doesn't look bad with the scratches either. It gets a nice used look to it, and it's pretty beautiful in my opinion. I like these scales. I like the mill marks. I like the thinness of the scales. They're very rigid. Overall, a nice package. Something I do want to comment on is the blade. This knife has an excellent blade. Overall, very nice design. Huge belly. Pretty much the whole blade is belly, so you don't really have much of a flat spot. Little flat spot here, but it soon curves into a belly. Pretty much stays for the rest of the blade. Stonewash on it is absolutely perfect. Very resistant to scratching. I actually cut up against a pretty heavy industrial steel staple and got this scratch. You can't feel the scratch at all. So it's not a nick in the blade, just a scratch, and the stone washing doesn't look bad at all. From a distance you can't even really see it. So this coating is very scratch resistant. It's not a coating, this finish is very scratch resistant. This is a very long linear scratch, so it's going to show up more than if you had a couple little random nicks. It is a flipper knife, so flipper action with a speed assist is kind of soulless to me. It has no heart. You just kind of engage the flipper and it sends it all the way out. Would much prefer this if it were to be a manual flipper, meaning that there is no speed assist. And for anybody who's not familiar with Kershaw speed assist, it's really just a spring steel torsion bar in this scale that is bending when you close the blade. So you have free movement in this range, and as soon as you hit this, you see I'm getting some resistance. When you close this knife, you're actually preloading that spring, so when you pull back on the assist, it fires the blade out. I'm sure most of you know that, but somebody out there would inevitably ask. Pivot, it is adjustable yourself. I did not really have to adjust this. There is no lateral play whatsoever, and yet the knife is still very smooth. Phosphor bronze washers, which you aren't going to be able to see there. You can see them just a little bit. So the blade rides on phosphor bronze bearings, not ball bearings, just phosphor bronze bearings, what a lot of people call washers. So the knife is very smooth in that regard. The stop pin is a hardened steel pin set in directly into the aluminum, and the diameter of that pin is 0.12. So not a huge stop pin by any means, but it is hardened steel, so it will hold up fairly well. I actually haven't gotten any peening of the stop pin whatsoever through repeated firings, and the reason I say that is because this blade does fire fairly hard, so it has a lot of energy behind it, and I figured if the stop pin wasn't actually hardened, then we would see some peening and therefore some changes in lockup, but no issues there. The thumb studs I do kind of see as redundant. I don't know why they're there. They don't serve as a blade stop. You do have a flipper here. I guess it's just a second option for deployment, but they really aren't necessary in my opinion. Nice thumb studs. They're not occluded at all. Very useful, but in my opinion, if you have a flipper, there's no need for the thumb studs. All it does to me is inhibit sharpening. So if I wanted to lay a really shallow angle on this, I wouldn't be able to do it due to the thumb studs unless I were to sharpen it at an angle like this, which can be done. Also, it's going to affect cutting. If you need to use the very heel of that blade, you're going to run into some issues hitting the material on the thumb stud. The blade itself is great. I talked about the belly. I did want to mention just how well this knife is ground. So a lot of knives aren't meant to be cutters, it seems. This one is definitely ground thin enough to be a good cutter. Actual spine thickness on this knife is 0.12, so just about the same diameter as the stop pin itself. And they grind it fairly thinly, so let me get the very edge just to make sure that I'm looking at the right thickness. Yeah, so 20 thou. I mean, that's not too bad, really. And let's compare that to something like a Kershaw Blur, which is definitely much more robust. We're looking at 30 thou, so it's a full 10 thou thicker on the Blur compared to the Knockout. And we'll take a look at the Para 2. Para 2 is almost 10 thou thicker than the Knockout as well. So people who think the Para 2 is a good cutter are definitely going to think the Knockout is a good cutter. Flat grind all the way to the swedge. So you have a flat grind that goes all the way to this swedge, and it does thin out very gradually, so it stays thin for a good long way. I would imagine that it stays thin pretty much. It's a fairly gradual, not too abrupt. Compared to a lot of knives that get very thick very fast, this is not too bad at all. So you have that much blade before it gets to the thickness of a Para 2. So you could see the actual very cutting edge is going to have some good performance, especially if you're doing very shallow cuts, popped leather or paracord, something like that. Going to have really good performance. Talking about the steel itself, 14C 28N, not my favorite steel, I have to admit. It does shine in a couple of areas. It holds a good edge, so don't get me wrong, it holds a good edge about as well as 8CR 13 MOV. So if you're used to a Spyderco Tenacious, you're going to see edge retention around that level, in my opinion. It's not amazing, it's nothing to write home about, but it's definitely a good working knife. Obviously it's been working for me. One plus that I do see on these knives is that the steel is incredibly easy to sharpen and incredibly easy to hone. You could see the quality of the edge that it came with from the factory was amazing. So nice, clean, even bevel. You could see some of my own work on this edge. I've done that because I didn't need to sharpen this knife ever. And I want to make a point here. Steels that don't hold their edge forever are not bad. There are no bad steels, they're just different. This knife works for me just as well as an S90V Para 2 would, and you may ask how that is. Well, an S90V Para 2 I may not have to touch up very often, but I will eventually have to sharpen it. It will take me longer to sharpen. Not going to be as easy to touch up as other knives such as this. So let's say I'm working, had to break down a lot of cardboard. The knife has lost some of its bite, won't shave hair anymore. Literally takes 2 swipes on a ceramic of this type. This is just a Spyderco ultrafine rod. 2 swipes on a ceramic and you're back to beyond hair shaving sharp. If you want to hit that with a strop, like a diamond loaded strop, you're going to be back to hair whittling really easily, really quickly. And in that regard, this is not a bad steel at all. Holds a respectable edge. For the time that it takes me to put an edge back on it, to hone it back to sharpness, So it may take me 20 seconds to hone it back to sharpness, and I may get 20 minutes of good hard use out of it before I have to do that again. That's a very, very good ratio. So I'm getting a lot more cutting for my honing time, if that makes sense. Stain resistance is great on this steel. I did get some staining, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick this up in this area. I had a little line of it. Don't know what I cut, but it did stain the blade in this area. All I had to do was rub that off with a little polishing compound. It did leave a little stained area that I can't really pick up for some reason. But in this area, it's a little stained, a little cloudy. Hard to pick up, don't know why, but you'll just have to trust me on that. So the blade is phenomenal. Love the steel. It's not going to be a super edge holder, but if you have any skill at all in sharpening, it's going to serve you really well. Took no damage. You're very resistant to damage, so very durable. I'm not going to speak about the toughness. Don't know about that. But it does take an incredibly sharp edge very, very easily. So it does work good in that regard. Speak about the ergonomics. The ergonomics are great on this knife, to be honest. There's only one limitation, and that the ergonomics are great in this position. So in this position, the knife is extremely, extremely comfortable. The thinness of the handle doesn't affect the comfort whatsoever. I don't get any issues with it trying to rotate in my hand. So this is extremely comfortable. The other extremely comfortable position is reverse. So this and this are pretty much what you're limited to on this knife. There is no choke up grip where you can get really far up on the blade. I did note that if you have small enough hands, you could get up on the blade like this, not entirely comfortable due to this flipper being in your way, but it is doable if you need to make some very detailed cuts or power cuts. So you have essentially three grips. You have this traditional hammer grip, which if you need to apply a lot of leverage on something, this is not going to be good because you're going to get a lot of leverage from the blade. If you really need to cut through something really thick and heavy, you're going to want to get up on that blade. That way you can apply all the force in, and there's not a lot of leverage trying to pull the knife back. So you have 1, 2, 3 grips, and that's essentially it. There's not a lot of options as far as choils, anything like that. The lockup on this knife is perfect. So it's been sitting right where it is now since I got it. If you do a lot of hard cutting, the lock bar will in fact move in. So it can move in almost all the way to the other scale. It actually won't go to the other scale, but it will move in this far if you're gripping the knife very hard or if you're cutting very hard material. Don't freak out. All you have to do to unlock this is pull back on the blade and push the lock bar out, and you're good to go. Normal flipping as a knife, since this is a steel lock bar, there's very minimal wear on the lock bar itself or the blade. So the tang is cut very well, just a very nice linear cut, so you get really perfect engagement every time. Fairly early, but there's no lock rock, no movement, no slippage whatsoever, so it's been great in that regard. Overall, this is an awesome knife. Little cheap things like this plastic backspacer, that may bug some people, but what can you expect for a $60 knife? If you wanted to, I'm sure you could get some standoffs to go back here, but really it's a $60 knife. Deal with it. It's an amazing value for what it is. Pocket clip's great. Ergonomics are great if you don't mind being limited to a few positions. Blade is exceptional. Cuts very, very, very well. Stays sharp for a good long time. Extremely easy to touch up. You have a lot of belly to work with. Imagine it would be a good knife for doing some skinning tasks. That's another position didn't think about. It actually is comfortable in this position, so there's no issues there. If you want to do some detailed work on the tip, that works perfect for that. Really just an amazing knife for the money. You can't really ask for much more than the Kershaw Knockout. Again, one of the knives I've used the most over the past year. Can't remember exactly when I got this, but I know it's been a long time, and it's been in my pocket for a long, long time. Been with me pretty much all the time. So, excellent knife. don't think you guys will be disappointed in it at all. Really just an affordable, excellent option. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if not, I'll see you next time.